Hello, welcome to Ray Recommends. My name is Raymond Antrobus. Today I'm going to be talking about some poetry collections which I've recommended to students and young poets that I've worked with who live in inner city London. I chose these poetry collections because they're not too dense, they don't require any kind of ivory tower level knowledge. And that's not to say that these books are simplistic or childish. Let's call them modest door openers away from the moat of the ivory tower. Number 1, Bell Hooks, A Woman's Morning Song. I recommended this poetry collection to a group of 13 and 14-year-old students. A lot of them struggled with their literacy, and the feedback I got from it was that it was really good. Number 2, Lems, Morning Breaks in the Elevator. I gave this collection to a few students and poets between the ages of 15 and 20. It's pretty direct, a lot of the poetry, but also it does explore some interesting and relatable areas. It pokes particular fun at xenophobic, racist attitudes in Britain. Number 3, Warsan Shahir, Teaching My Mother How to Give Birth. I've recommended this book to almost all students between the ages of 12 and 25 years old. Warsan is one of the leading names in contemporary poetry. Her poetry is tweetable, memorable and meaningful. Number 4, Simon Armitage, Seeing Stars. I love this collection. I feel like it's written by one of the most versatile contemporary poets in the UK. Now, many of my students have been forced to study Simon Armitage, so this can be a little bit of a hard sell. But this poetry collection is quite different to a lot of his other collection. But I'd say that this poetry collection has a real childlike charm about it. Number 5, John Agard, Travel Light, Travel Dark. This is a brilliant collection of poetry, and I think that it will relate to poets of all ages, really, just because it explores a lot of different historical sites that young readers and older readers will be familiar with. Also, Habak Osman, a young poet from London. I've given this poetry book to poets who are around 16 and 21 years old. A really interesting read. I think the most powerful poems in this book are the ones which look at troubling, struggling relationships with family members and mental health. Number 7, Sad Book by Michael Rosen. Lastly, I'm going to recommend A Complicated Answer. This is a book of poems, an anthology actually, written by students growing up in Hackney between the ages of 11 and 17 years old. I'd just like to read you the first poem in this book by a young poet who's in year 7. He was 11 years old when he wrote this poem, and it's called Under Me. Underneath the bridge is a small goblin, and when it strikes midnight, that goblin turns into a giant, and underneath that goblin is a bag, and in that bag a raging buffalo, and underneath that buffalo is my brain, and underneath that brain is a folder, and in that folder all of my memories, and in that folder is a raging demon, and underneath that demon is a memory where my dad left me without saying goodbye, and underneath that goodbye is a boy trapped between 4 walls, and that boy is me. Underneath me is a poem. Underneath that poem are words waiting to come out of my mouth. So there you have it, 8 poetry books that you can check out, read them, relish them, recommend them to students and teachers. Or you could just read them on your own for your own sense of discovery. Ray recommends.